So to get started, the big idea here is that finding concave up or down requires f double prime of x, the second derivative. So it's easier here to rewrite this x to the fourth over 4 as 1/4 times x to the fourth. Then when I go to take the first derivative, I have f prime of x is 1/4 times 4x cubed minus 4 times 3x squared. The derivative of minus 5 is 0 because minus 5 is a constant. That's the first derivative, and my life will be easier from here if I simplify it. Multiply this 1/4 times 4 to get 1x cubed, and multiply this 4 times 3 to get 12x squared. Now I need to take the derivative of this. I still need the second derivative, aka the derivative of the first derivative. So f double prime of x will be 3 times x squared minus 24x. How do we use that to determine concavity? We make a sign chart for f double prime of x. Remember that wherever f double prime of x is positive, then f of x will be concave up, and wherever f double prime of x is negative, then f of x will be concave down. So our first step here will be in making the sign chart will be to solve where f double prime of x is equal to 0. My f double prime of x was equal to 3x squared minus 24x. So I want to solve 3x squared minus 24x equal to 0. I need to factor this if possible. And it turns out I can factor out a 3x, and then I'm left with x minus 8 here. From the zero product property, one of these two things must be 0. So I'm going to split this out and solve 3x equals 0, or x minus 8 equals 0. These are the two equations I need to figure out. Well, 3x equals 0, this gives me the solution x equals 0. And x minus 8 equals 0, this gives me the solution x equals 8. So I found the two places where f double prime of x is equal to 0. So my next step is to divide the real line into intervals based on the solutions from step 1. So I have from negative infinity to 0, I have from 0 to 8, and I have from 8 to positive infinity. The next step is to select a test point from each region. These are things that you get to pick, but I'm going to pick x equals -1 for negative infinity to 0. I'll test x equals +1 for 0 to 8, and I will test x equals 10 from 8 to infinity. Now let's look at step 4. Calculate f double prime of x at each test point. Our goal here is to find the sign, so it might be easier to work with the factored form instead of the original. If I look at my first test point, which was x equals -1, and I plug that into the factored form, I get 3 times -1 times -1 minus 8. I can see that this is going to be a negative number times a negative number, which is a positive number. So f double prime of -1 is a positive value. I'm going to do the same calculations with x equals +1 and x equals 10. Now I'm going to take this information and I'm going to take it back to my sign chart. To make my conclusions, which is to translate from the information about f double prime of x to f of x. So f double prime of x positive on this interval means that f of x is concave up on this interval, and f double prime of x negative on 0 to 8 means that f of x is concave down, and f double prime of x positive on 8 to infinity means that f of x concave up. My conclusion is that f of x is concave up on negative infinity to 0 union 8 infinity, and concave down on 0 to 8. And I can also, because I can see the places where f of x changes concavity, or f double prime of x changes signs, I can see that f of x has inflection points at x equals 0 and x equals 8. Wants not just the x value, but also the y value. We need xy pairs, x equals 0 and x equals 8. We're on the graph of y equals f of x, so we might as well say that these are x f of x pairs. X equals 0, the first coordinate will just be 0. And to get the second coordinate, I'm going to evaluate f of 0. F of 0 is 1/4, 0 to the 4th is 4 times 0 cubed minus 5. This is 0, so I just end up with f of 0 equals negative 5. First answer as 0, negative 5. It says separate multiple answers by commas, so I'm going to put a comma because I have one more answer. Similarly, to find the y-coordinate on the inflection point at x equals 8, I need to evaluate f of 8. So the y-coordinate there is negative 1029, as parentheses 8 comma negative 1029, and those are my two inflection points.